Hello again and welcome to the ZGuy programming channel. Python edition, today's topic, continuation of looping. Today we're going to discuss the programming concept of looping. As its name implies, we can give our programs the ability to loop or repeat a section of code. We can choose to either loop for a set number of times or until a particular condition is met. And there are two videos in this series. Part one we already hopefully watched, and that discussed the while programming construct. In this second video, we were going to discuss the for programming construct. Okay, if you watched our first video on looping, these examples are going to be basically the same example using the for loop instead of the while, so we're going to go through the exact same programming scenarios. And the first one we're going to do is to sum the values from 1 to 100. Alright, we need to create a value to hold the sum and set that to 0. And we're going to set a value called max to 100 because we want to sum up 100 values. Then we execute our for command. And like the while statement, it's pretty straightforward. The keyword is for. The syntax here says for, and then the next part is a variable that it's going to use to contain the incremented value that we're going to use in our loop. In this case, we're going to call it I. In is the next keyword. Range is our next keyword. 1, and we're going to go max plus 1. Now the reason we have max plus 1, because you said, well, we want to sum up the values from 1 to 100. The way the for loop works is it runs your loop from the first value here that you state, the value of 1, up to this value, but not including that value. So if we simply left this at max, the value 100, it would say for I in the range of 1 up to 100, but not including 100. So by adding the plus 1 to the max variable, we can say this becomes 101. So it says for I in range 1 up to, but not including, 101. All right, we'll continue on in our program. We're going to say if, or no, sorry. We're going to say sum plus equals I. Now, if this is new syntax to you because you didn't watch the previous video, this is shorthand for saying sum equals sum plus I. All right. After the loop is complete, we're going to print the result of our summation. Now, if you had watched the while video, you'll notice that this is a much cleaner version because there's, well, in this case, there's only one less line of code, but the index, this I variable, the incrementing of that index is handled for you, so you don't have to have that increment line of code that you do with the while statement. So let's run this. Let's call our program loops2.py. We'll run that, Python loops2.py, and you'll see our summation is 50-50, just like it was when we ran the while loop. All right, in this version of the program, we're going to make a couple of little changes. We're going to sum up the values from 1 to 100, but not the value 50. And we made a little bit of a change here. Instead of making this with this max plus 1, let's just set our max value equal to 101. It's a little cleaner looking, and I prefer to do it that way rather than doing the max plus 1. So what we're doing here is we're going to loop from 1 up to 101, but not including 101. And we're going to sum up all those values like we did last time, but in this case we're going to add an if statement. We're going to say if I, our index variable that is automatically being incremented at every time it goes through the loop, if I is equal to 50, we're going to execute this continue statement. This continue statement will skip all the rest of the lines in the loop, which in this case is just the sum line. It's going to skip those and go immediately back to the beginning, increment I, check to see if it's in the range that we want it to be, and then continue on. In this case, it would increment to 51, and it would drop down here and execute the sum statement. Go back up top, increment to 52, etc., until it goes through the number 100, and then drop down and execute the print. So let's run this, save it and run it. As you saw, we had a sum of 50/50, so we would expect if we don't want the value of 50 to be included, that our sum is 5,000, and indeed that's exactly what we got. Okay, this time we're going to discuss an extra parameter in the range command. Okay, we've always previously in the two examples we just used two parameters. What number do we want to start with? What number do we want to end with? There's actually another parameter that is optional. It defaults to a value of 1, but this is what we increment I by each time we go through the loop. So as before, we incremented from 1 to 100, we went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If we put a 2 here, it's going to increment by 2, so it'll start at 1, it'll go 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, or in this case, all the odd numbers. So let's run this program, and we'll find that summation of all the odd numbers is 2,500. As we did in our previous loop video with the while statement, we're going to go through the Fibonacci series using the for loop. The Fibonacci series is created where the next number in the series is equal to the sum of the previous two numbers. So we're going to set a value of n equal to 15. That's how many numbers we want to generate in the Fibonacci series. We're going to set a to 1 and b equal to 1. We're going to create our for loop for I. This is our index. That's going to be automatically incremented each time we go through the loop in the range of n. So this is a little bit different way of stating this. We're using one parameter instead of giving it a range from like 1 to n. And in this case, the value of I will be from 0 to 14. Through 14 for a total of 15 iterations. All right, we said n was 15, so it's going to loop 15 times. But the value of I will be from 0 to 14. Okay, previously we had specified start at a value of 1. If you don't give it a start number, it starts at 0. Just so you know. Now we're not using the value of I in any of our calculations, so we're not concerned with what number it is that it's starting with or anything like that. We're not trying to sum up using that value of the index like we did before. We just want to make sure we execute the loop 15 times, and this is a way to do that. So these three lines here is doing the math of calculating what's the sum of the previous two numbers, saving that value, and then printing the value out. All right, so let's run this and let's take a look at what this Fibonacci series looks like. Okay, so if you take these two numbers, well, you'd get 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, 3 plus 5 is 8, 5 plus 8 is 15. That is how the Fibonacci series is calculated. And this is a little example of how you can do that using the for loop. If you didn't look at the while loop, go ahead and look at the previous video that was done on looping part 1 and do a comparison of the same programs using while and for. As a matter of fact, we didn't do the summation of just the odd numbers in the while video, so go ahead and try that on your own. Create a summation of the odd numbers from 1 to 100 using the while programming construct. Alright, I think in our next example video what we're going to do is we're going to tie all these things together, all the different things we've learned, the if then else and the fors and the whiles and the inputs and the prints, and we're going to actually generate a bit larger of a program to kind of tie all the things that we've learned up to this point together. Alright, as I always say, have a great day and enjoy your Python experience.